kind of class update. Um, Apparently, you guys saw the email, at least with the link for the class, and also, in that email or in that message, I included that I've made this a permanent link. Right. So instead of sending a new link every day, this is just the link, and I put a link directly to it in Moodle. So you can either get to this by going back into that email or going on our Moodle site. I made it the top link on the class page. Will take you right to this Zoom ID or whatever it is you want to call it. And I did that because I've determined that we are going to remain online for the rest of the semester. Um, there have been a there has been an alarming spike of cases in the community, and the college doesn't seem to be doing anything about protecting employees or students. So I've decided to just go ahead and do that on my own. So um, we will be doing Zoom classes for the rest of the semester. And it will be the kind of the same mode here of I record all of them, I put them online and make them available. So if you do miss class, just make sure you catch up. Just make sure you go back and watch those videos later, so that you are aware of what we've been talking about, what we're doing, all that kind of good jazz. So I just want to give you all a heads up that moving forward, we will be Zoom exclusive for this class. So it's not ideal. I know we talked at the beginning of the semester about, all of us kind of had a preference to meet face to face, but um, conditions don't seem to be moving in a favorable direction, and there isn't any indication that it's going to get better. With the holidays coming up, I mean, Halloween is this weekend. There's people are going to be doing a lot more risky behavior, and like I said, there's cases on campus that are increasing. There's cases in the community that are increasing. And as I told my class yesterday, I am personally not in any position to screw around with this. I have a ton of comorbidities. I said to my class yesterday, I'm a walking comorbidity. Like if I catch this shit, I'm done for, and I'm not okay with that. I'm not planning on that. So we are going to be online for the rest of the semester, and you know, sorry, but some people have to ruin it for the rest of us. So it is what it is. Um, Trying to keep you guys safe selfishly. Yeah, trying to keep me safe too. I'll admit it. I am a horrible, selfish person because I want to not get sick. I know, terrible of me. So that being said, we should be able to finish up the PR advertising unit today. And where we left off last time is we were talking about kind of the business of advertising and some of the concerns about advertising, the ethical qualms of advertising, and how it obviously includes some inherent problems with just the nature of the industry itself. We're going to kind of shift a little bit now and talk about the other side of that, and that's PR. And kind of a way to help us transition from talking about advertising to talking about PR is how advertising and PR have kind of merged quite a bit in the last few years. Advertising has discovered that wow, there's a lot of tools that PR is using that we can use to our benefit. And so there's a lot of blurring of those lines of distinction between advertising and PR, right? And in one way, it's because a lot of these firms are merging, right? Advertising companies and PR companies are merging. So you have an advertising wing and a PR wing of the exact same company. That's a newer development, right? That's something that's happened in the last decade. Before that, it was they were seen as very distinct entities for good reason. The goal of one is to get you to buy a product. The goal of the other is to get you to have a positive feeling towards a person or a thing or a group. Um, Advertising realized, wait a minute, if we do blatant sales pitches, people tend to put up a wall. People put their guard up when they hear a sales pitch. But if we can sneak in the back door, right? If we can if we can sell something without making people think we're selling them, we see better results. And so advertising firms and PR firms started kind of merging. For the record, whenever you hear the term merger, that's It's not exactly accurate. A merger implies a 50-50. Like they two groups got together and went, hey, let's work together. In reality, in business, one buys the other, right? So they call it a merger, but really it's an acquisition. It's always an acquisition. And in most cases, it's advertising firms acquiring PR firms, kind of taking them in, buying them out, and bringing their people in, to kind of incentivize or to profitize more off of their product. One of the ways that you blur these lines really, really, really successfully is through something we call earned media. This is something that, if any of you ever volunteer for a charity organization, if any of you work with any kind of a even a for-profit company that is in desperate need of exposure, earned media is a wonderful tool at your disposal that not enough people outside of marketing really utilize. Outside of marketing professionals, I should say, really utilize. And earned media is the idea that if I can convince a news station or a newspaper or a news source to cover my event as if it was news, that's free marketing, right? That's free advertising. And smart companies, smart charities, smart organizations use earned media all the time, right? Um, every company, every nonprofit should be sending out press releases really daily, about anything that they're doing, any event that they have going on, any big news that's occurred, anything at all, because I don't have to pay for that coverage, right? Give you an example, a Highland centric example. If a faculty member from Highland were to win a national award, right? And Highland wants to capitalize on that. They want to turn that into a way to market the school. The advertising approach is to pay someone to make a commercial, make a 30-second spot, and then pay a network to air it, or pay a website to spotlight it, or pay a firm to optimize it in search engine results, right? Or I type up a press release, I send it to all of the local television stations, radio stations, newspapers, and hope that one of them does a story about it, covers it, right? Either does a write-up on their website, or maybe even sends out a camera crew and does an interview, and it airs on 5 and 6. The first option, I have to spend money to promote this thing. And because there's a cost associated, I'm naturally less inclined to do that. I'm less inclined to do something if it's going to cost me money. But the second approach, the earned media approach, doesn't cost me a damn thing, right? I get just as many, if not more, eyes on this subject without having to pay for it. It's a real shame that more companies and especially nonprofits don't understand this and don't do this. It doesn't matter how minor, it doesn't matter how basic, it doesn't matter how minimal the press release is. Send them out nonstop, because the reality is, and we talked about this when we talked about journalism, the reality is there are some days where you're in the press room and you're budgeting, you're trying to figure out how to fill all your time for that show, or how to fill all of your column inches, and you're struggling. You're struggling to find stuff to put out. Well, if I have a stack of press releases there every day, there you go. Custom fit. I can just slot those press releases right into my show, right into my newspaper, right into my website. So me as a reporter, me as a journalist, I've got free content, right? I don't have to work to find a story. And you as a marketing person, as a PR person, as an advertiser, there you go. You just got your client more views. You got more exposure for your client without having to spend a dime, right? It costs you nothing but time to send out press releases. the cost reward ratio is just insanely high for reward. It's crazy lopsided towards reward. Why aren't they doing it? It's a beef I've had with Highland for 15 years. Is why are we not sending out a press release every fucking day? Every TV station in Rockford, every TV station in Quad Cities, every TV station in Iowa that covers the Dubuque market. Why are we not just flooding all of these media outlets with press releases? We have a whole department on campus. A lot of people don't realize that. We have a whole department. Community relations is what they're called, right? They're the ones who are responsible for the marketing of Highland Community College. We have a whole department whose entire job is to market. You're telling me they can't write press releases and hit send on an email? How much time does that take? I'll tell you, about 15 minutes max. And the potential coverage you get from that, the potential goodwill you get from that, the earned media you can get from that, it absolutely blows my mind we don't do that. It absolutely blows my mind. And yeah, I've been very vocal about that. And that's part of the reason, just part of the reason. A lot of people don't like me because I'm very vocal about that. We're leaving money on the table, for fuck's sake. Like we're not taking advantage of an opportunity that like has so much potential to get our name out there, to make people aware of what we are, what we have going on, you know, to brag, to publicly brag for free. And we're not doing it. And I just don't get it. Just don't get it. But a lot of other companies have gotten it. A lot of other advertisers and marketers have got it, and they use it a lot, right? Their holy grail is earned media, right? That's the thing you're always trying to get, is free coverage. So as advertisers have shifted and started absorbing public relations firms, right? What are they getting? Right? What are they actually getting in a public relations firm? What does public relations actually do? Public relations is creating understanding for or goodwill toward a company, a person, or a product. And in fact, in public relations kind of parlance, in their discussions, they always refer to the product, whether it's a company or a person or a thing. It's always the product. You know, if I'm a publicist for a professional athlete, right, that athlete is my product, which I realize is reductive to talk about human beings as products, but that is the terminology. That is typically what is done. So my job in public relations is to get people to understand my product or to just like my product. That's it. That's my goal. I just want you to like them, right? If I work in public relations for Coca-Cola, like I just want you to feel good about Coca-Cola. I want you to see that logo, see that red can, and have a warm feeling inside, right? And how do I do that? Right? By a lot of charity work, by attaching my brand to a lot of things that people feel very positive about and getting that kind of, trust by association kind of a thing, right? By airing, classic Christmassy commercials, right? That show cute polar bears, right? Rolling in the snow. I emphasize the positive associations of my product, right? Again, whether that's a company or whether that's a person or it's a thing. If I'm a publicist for a professional athlete, I'm going to make sure I'm the one who makes sure that professional athlete goes to charity events. I'm the one who pushes that professional athlete to, sign on to this cause. I'm the one who makes sure that professional athlete, has a social media presence that isn't full of, racist slurs. I'm the one who's making sure that athlete is received in a positive light in the public. That's my entire job, is to sell you that this person or this company or this thing is good. That's what I'm doing. As such, as we asked with advertising, does that make PR inherently persuasive? Again, I would argue yes. I would say absolutely. A lot of people in PR will try to convince you that all they're doing is informing you about the good works of this person, but they're informing you for the purpose of getting you to like them, right? They're not informing you just because, like, oh, I just thought you should know. No, it's because there's an objective there. There's a motive, and that motive is positive affiliation, positive association. Whereas advertising is more directly persuasive of buy my stuff, PR is much more of a subversive persuasion, almost a propaganda type persuasion, where all I'm going to do is shield that person from the negative and accentuate the positive, right? Um, Public relations and wartime propaganda are not all that different. They're really not all that different when it comes down to it. But propaganda is inherently persuasive. It is naturally persuasive. You're trying to convince people that this thing is something they should like, and that's a persuasive act. So, what are the types of PR? What are the different fields you can go into in public relations? One is financial public relations, and this is a very specialized field. This is PR for financial entities, right? So, working in public relations for Bank of America is a very specialized field. It's really fucking hard right now. It's really hard to put positive spin and make banks look good right now. But that's a specific job because the financial industry is so unique. The financial industry is so different. So financial public relations requires not only understanding public relations techniques, not only requires understanding public relations models and approaches, but also you have to understand the financial market industry. You have to understand a lot of those business practices, because unlike a lot of other areas where you could do PR, there's not only a high degree of specificity and a high degree of specialization, but there are very specific laws about what you can and cannot say when you're talking about financial matters to clients, right? If you get to the point in your life, which you should do it very soon, even though I know right now most of you don't have a lot of money, you should start already thinking about retirement savings, right? You absolutely should. And I know nobody wants to think about that at 18 or 19 years old, but as a guy who's 40 years old, I'm telling you, for the love of God, start thinking about your retirement now. You'll see ads sometimes for, like Charles Schwab or Fidelity Investments and all that, right? They are very, very handcuffed. They're very limited in what words, what phrases they're allowed to say to describe their product. One of those words that's really important to listen for is what's called a fiduciary, right? A fiduciary is an investment firm that is legally obligated to put your financial concerns ahead of their own. A fiduciary is legally obligated to do what's better for your portfolio than their own. The fact that that distinction exists means that non-fiduciaries don't have to do that. They are not required to put your portfolio's interests ahead of their own. So a non-fiduciary company is not allowed, right, to market themselves, to sell themselves on the idea that they're going to do what's best for you no matter what. Like, they're legally not allowed to. And that's not a distinction that's made in other industries, right? Coca-Cola is not, there are no laws that say that, soft drink makers or food producers have to, be clear that they don't care about you. It's only in the financial market that those laws exist. So financial public relations is a very specific field, right? It's a very lucrative field. You could do very well there, but it does require a very different kind of education, very different kind of training. You can't go from working in PR for Lay's potato chips to working for PR for Charles Schwab, right? That kind of lateral movement doesn't exist. The most common types of PR is what we call product public relations. And like I said, product here refers to whatever it is you're representing, whether that's an individual or a thing or a company. Again, product PR is what people usually are thinking about when they're thinking about PR. They're thinking about like, okay, my job is to make, this person look good. My job is to make this company look good. I do, I figure out charities to attach ourselves to. Usually when it comes to a person, they're referred to as a publicist. Celebrities, major important figures will have people on staff who, that's their title, is they're a publicist. They set up interviews. They vet the interviewer. They vet the products that they're going to be attached to. They do the legwork. So like, if here's a classic example. A few years ago, Kathy Lee Gifford, who was one of the hosts of the Today Show in the morning, right? She had a clothing line, right? And years ago, it was discovered that clothing line was produced in sweatshops in Southeast Asia, right? So they were using slave labor to produce these clothes that had Kathy Lee Gifford's name on them. Whoever her publicist is, you better believe they got their ass fired. Because it's part of their job to make sure that doesn't happen, right? If your client, if Kathy Lee Gifford comes to you and says, hey, I want to get into the clothing industry, as a publicist, one of your primary responsibilities is to make sure that that connection does not come back to make your person look shitty, right? And in this case, it did. They didn't do the due diligence. They didn't do their job. And as a result, Kathy Lee Gifford looked really, really bad, right? Which is when she hired a different type of public relations firm known as a crisis public relations firm. Crisis public relations are the people that you bring in only when shit's gone down, right? When things have gone bad, you hire a crisis PR person. If you ever watched the show Scandal with Kerry Washington, right? She was a crisis PR person. She's a fixer. When things go bad, when shit hits the fan and you need to look good in a hurry, you need to stop the bleeding, you hire a crisis PR firm. Most PR firms will have this already built in, right? So if my company has a contract with, Smith and Smith Marketing, right? And they do my normal product PR, but then something goes wrong, they have a crisis team who comes in just to handle that. Something goes wrong, right? It usually isn't something you have to go find another company, find another firm. It's usually something that's built in. But these are people who specialize in just, all right, how do I stop the bleeding? How do I do a quick fix on your public image? When BP a couple years ago had that massive oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, right? They went into overdrive with their crisis PR. Immediately, BP had to start planning and executing ideas to separate their brand from what we were seeing on the news, right? Every night on the news, you're seeing, all these dead animals washing up on shore. You're seeing the sludge. You're hearing stories about all of these, fishermen and shrimpers and crabbers who are, their livelihood is now gone because BP fucked up. And so BP's crisis PR team had to put in a lot of hours and a lot of hard work to separate the BP name from the event. One of the ways they did that was by continuously using the name of the platform that blew up rather than BP, right? One of the first things they wanted to do was change the phrasing so that instead of people saying the BP oil spill, they said it was the Horizon oil spill, right? Because the name of the oil platform that blew up, I can't remember the exact name of it, but it was something Horizon, right? Because when you say the Horizon oil spill, there you go. It's no longer BP's problem. Right? Do people know that BP is behind it? Sure. But they don't think about that when they're talking about the Horizon oil spill. Right? Another thing that BP did very quickly after that disaster is they changed their name from British Petroleum to Beyond Petroleum. Right? So they're still BP. They're still BP oil. But now it's, oh, no, look, we're Beyond Petroleum. Look, we're looking at the future. We're looking at solar. We're looking at wind. We're looking at renewables. Yeah, we're still going to sell you this. Yeah, we're still going to, drill offshore, but we're also doing all this other stuff. BP changed their logo, right? They immediately came out with a new logo. These are very standard practice crisis PR moves. You want to flip a switch, right? And say, yes, that bad shit happened, but that was a different company. We're a different company now. We're a new company. We're starting over. And they want to create a separation in people's minds between the company that was responsible for this disaster and the company that now exists. It's the same fucking company, right? It's all about just manipulating people's minds. It's all about just, good salesmanship. In one of the kind of landmark cases of of crisis PR, crisis public relations, that if you take PR classes, if you take dedicated public relations classes, you will absolutely, all public relations classes deal with the Tylenol scandal and how Tylenol handled a crisis in the early 80s. In the early 1980s, a bunch of people in the Chicago area started getting really, 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 really sick, like horribly ill, and nobody could figure out what was going on, right? It was this very bizarre, very random, but very serious situation. And after some investigation, it was discovered that all of these people who had nothing in common, right, didn't know each other, didn't work together, didn't live, really that near each other. These people had no connections to each other, but they were all ending up with the same symptoms and the same problems. It was discovered that they had all bought Tylenol from like this handful of stores. Right? That was the only thing they had in common, is that they had all bought and used Tylenol. And human beings being human beings freaked the fuck out and went, oh my God, Tylenol is poison. Oh my God, Tylenol will kill you. And so people started boycotting Tylenol, right? People stopped buying Tylenol. There was this absolute fear and people were throwing away what they had, right? So the Tylenol company had to figure out, like, fuck, what do we do? Well, what it turns out is that it wasn't the Tylenol. Some psychopath decided that he wanted to randomly murder people. And so he went into these pharmacies and he injected poison. I believe it was cyanide. It was cyanide or arsenic. He injected poison into some of these pills and then put them back on the shelf. He wasn't targeting anybody. He wasn't like trying to hurt someone in particular. He just wanted to hurt people. It wasn't Tylenol's fault, right? But Tylenol had to clean up the mess. So what Tylenol did is, not only did they do a ton of advertising and a ton of media reports about the safety of their product, and they showed all these tests and rolled out all these scientists talking about how safe it is and all this, all the good it is. But from a very simplistic perspective, they started putting plastic seals around the top of the bottle. They started making tamper-proof lids and tamper-proof seals. Does that actually make you safe? No. Does it make you feel safe? Yes. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. The people who came up with that, genius move. Saved the company by putting shrink wrap plastic around the top of the bottle. That's it. That's all they had to do. And confidence was restored, right? That is the gold standard of crisis PR. Crisis PR is, again, a very lucrative field, right? You can do really well for yourself in crisis PR, but it's stressful as hell. It is a high degree of stress, right? High reward, but high stress. I don't know. I kind of like crisis PR. Like, I think it would be fun, but I'm also a very sick person. So it's one of those things where it's probably like I would hate it if I actually got into it, but just seems like, like, oh man, I could really get into that. But it also kind of, it's kind of dirty. Like if if I worked in crisis PR and the BP oil spill happens in the Gulf, right? And they come to me and they're like, hey, we need you to help us, bro. I'm gonna have a real hard time taking that job. Like, I'm a real hard time taking that job. I don't know if I want to help you. You guys are assholes. You knew what you were doing. You deliberately avoided safety precautions, and now you did all this. So part of me thinks it'd be exciting. Part of me thinks like it's kind of like being a defense attorney or a prosecutor, right? Being a criminal lawyer. Like, you're going to have to do shady shit. You're going to have to defend a jerk. You're going to have to defend a monster, or you're going to have to prosecute somebody who probably shouldn't be prosecuted. Like, just, I don't know, man. Like, I struggle with that. But you don't give a shit. You don't care. Neither here nor there. Moving on. So what are the goals of PR, right? What do we want to do? We work in PR. What is it we're going for? What is it we're aiming for? One of the first goals of PR is what we've already talked about. And that's called branding, right? The immediate recognition of my product. You know what the most recognized symbol in the world is? Not the United States, the world.
Coca-Cola logo.
Coca-Cola logo, good guess. Anybody else? Yep, Ben got it. Oh God, that hurt to say out loud. But yeah, Ben's right. It's the McDonald's Golden Arches. The McDonald's Golden Arches is the most recognized symbol in the world. Damn, that's good branding. that is some damn fine work. More people in the world recognize the Golden Arches than the Christian cross. More people recognize the symbol of McDonald's than the symbol of Christianity. That's wow. that should make you pause. That should give you a beat of like, whoa, that's a lot. Yes, that's very good job on behalf of McDonald's. Because we've already talked about branding quite a bit, but that is, again, just to reiterate, kind of the point of PR is branding. One of the other goals of PR that's we haven't touched on yet, but is incredibly important, is what we call the two symmetric model. And I think that's a stupid name. Again, total aside here, but just that's a two symmetric. You can't have a singular thing symmetric. Symmetric means two things that are the same. It's fucking dumb. Anyway, it's like people who say ATM machine. Oh, an automated teller machine? You schmuck. So it's called the two symmetric model, even though it shouldn't be called. But the two symmetric model is the idea that, and again, this is a goal. This is an aspiration, not necessarily a reality. But the aspiration is, in PR, I'm trying to convince you of something that you want anyway, right? So the two symmetric idea, the symmetry idea is, from a public relations perspective, my goals are the same as your goals, right? I want the goals of my product marketing to equal your goals as a consumer. Again, it's aspirational. This doesn't mean that it ever happens. It means that that's what we're working towards, right? And it's kind of an ethics-based model. It's the idea that ethically, we should be aiming to speak to the causes and speak to the issues that are of the concern of our base, of our people. It's an ethically based aspiration, but it's just not necessarily one that we really see very often. It's not one that we actually see very often. It's a rare case where you actually experience a two-symmetric model in play, right? Like public safety campaigns, right, are probably like about the only example you'll find of two-symmetric modeling, where, you know, the click it or ticket, right? Click it or ticket is a two-symmetric model PR issue. My goals are your goals. Your goals are to live, and my goals are to help you live, right? I want you to put on your seatbelt, and you want to live. So there we go. We end up at the same place. But there's not a lot of other instances where that happens. Unfortunately, in the era of social media and fake news and general fucking stupidity, even public health campaigns are becoming less and less symmetrical. A buddy of mine from college, a guy I knew in college, is a professor at Western Illinois University now. And he's in charge of their Mask Up campaign at Western, right? So if you go on Western Illinois University's social media, if you go to their website or anything like that, you'll see like Mask Up, you know, what are they? They're not bulldogs, but they're something like that, right? They're like Mask Up dogs, or, you know, Mask Up whatever they are. Leathernecks. That's right. They're the Leathernecks, right? The Mask Up Leathernecks campaign. Well, he created that campaign, right? He's the one who's kind of pushing that campaign of trying to get people to wear a fucking mask at Western Illinois University. Why is that controversial? Like, for fuck's sake. It really is. It's the equivalent of people seeing a click it or ticket thing and being like, no, fuck you. You can't make me. Why are we like this? Why? Stop it. Just put on the fucking mask. Wear a damn seatbelt. Don't drink fucking bleach. Like, how are these things we have to argue about now? Like, I'm fine. Unlike advertisers, the public relations field takes ethics very seriously. In the advertising world, ethics are kind of like, you know, cute. It's like, oh, that's adorable. You know, you're going to pretend like you have morals. But in PR, they really do take it very, very seriously. Again, as the two-symmetric model kind of indicates, right? That's their goal. Their aspirational goal is to only market things that help people. Ethics is really a legitimate concern of the industry. The Public Relations Society of America, which is kind of the it's kind of a trade group. It's not a union, right? It's like a membership group, right? It's like I don't know. It's like being on an honor society almost, right? It's the organization that kind of is the leading proponent of PR ethics and of PR practices, right? Well, they have a code of ethics, and they regularly and very strictly enforce them and update them, right? The PRSA does a really good job of not only making their ethical code well known, but making it adaptable, right? Not on an individual basis, but on a societal basis, so that as ethics change in a society, PRSA changes there. It's not like their code of ethics is 300 years old, right? They stay on top of it, and they enforce it, right? They enforce their ethical code. If someone in the public relations field is a habitual violator, if they routinely, consistently violate the code of ethics of the PRSA, they get blacklisted in the industry, right? If again, because PR is something that tends to happen, right? You get hired for PR by working for a firm, right? You work for a marketing firm or an advertising firm. They check that shit. They look at that. If you constantly are going around violating the ethical standards of the industry, before any firm is going to hire you, they're going to look at the PRSA's kind of unofficial list of violators, and you won't get another job. If you want to go into public relations and you want to do so unethically, you won't work there very long. And that is not something I can say for a lot of other industries. And that's impressive. I actually am very impressed with the PRSA. Again, if you plan on studying public relations or marketing when you move on in your education, before you transfer to a school, one of the first things you should do is look up their PRSSA chapter, which is the Public Relations Student Society of America. If the college you're thinking of transferring to doesn't have an active and engaged PRSSA chapter, you shouldn't go there, right? The best schools for marketing have very vibrant PRSSA chapters on their campus. They have a large membership. They have an active membership. They are engaged. They do events on campus. They bring in speakers. They bring in, they have job fairs. They bring in networking opportunities for their students, right? If you want to go into PR, you should absolutely go to a school that has a Public Relations Student Society of America chapter. It will make your life a hell of a lot easier. It will get you a better education. So I'm very impressed with the PRSA because there aren't too many other industries out there. There aren't too many other types of work you can go into where ethics are that serious, right? Or they're that seriously enforced even. I shit on advertising, I shit on PR, but I got to give them this much. And in the public relations side of things, they do actually want you to be a decent human being. So that's kind of nice. For the record, they do not have such a thing in the teaching industry. In the teaching field, there is no ethical code that's established and enforced, which is why there's so many assholes who teach. Because they get there and they're like, I can do what I want. I'm a god. Brr, brr, brr. Not naming any names. Not naming any names. But I will later. Like, if you ask me, I will. But I'm not going to just throw it out there. I'm more than willing to say it, but not here. So, I said not here, Ben. God. Oh. If this isn't your first semester at Highland, I'm sure you know a few of them. I'm sure everybody who's listening to my voice right now is like, I can think of a couple of people who just shouldn't be here because they're assholes. I'm about to fight my daughter's teacher, my daughter's second grade teacher. Me and her about to fucking throw down, bro. I'm gonna whoop this old lady's ass. She's not that old. She's older than me, but like I'm gonna whoop her ass. She's calling my daughter disrespectful because my daughter is like doing her own shit, and I ain't having it. I'm not that guy, right? I'm not that like oh, the teacher's wrong, my princess. I'm not that guy. She's legit a dick. Like she's like, there's been several instances where my daughter has done something wrong, and I'm there for that. I am saying she's wrong. This one, just stop teaching. You know what I mean? Like you clearly don't like kids. Go away. Like if you don't like people, don't be a teacher. Right? Like I hate shit. I hate dog shit. Right? I don't like disgusting, which is why I don't work at a fucking vet's office or a dog pound or a humane society. right? Don't do it if you don't like it, jerks. Anyway, well, that's it. There you go. You made it, guys. You survived all the way to the end. I'm proud of you. Look at you coming up in the world, getting all big and strong. Okay. All right. One more piece of business before you guys run away. I will open up the first exam on Friday. Okay. So starting on Friday, you can take the first exam for this class. It is multiple choice, but it is timed. Okay. So you can obviously use your notes. You can obviously use your book if you have one. You can obviously use Google. But if you go into the test without studying, you will run out of time before you get through all the questions. Okay. So make sure you study before you actually open up the test. How many questions? I think 25, but I'm not 100% sure right now. I think 25 questions, but don't quote me on that. When I open the test, you'll have 1 week. Okay? So you don't have to take it on Friday, right? It'll open on Friday and you have until the following Friday to complete the test. But again, once you take it, once you start it, that's it. You can't start it and then walk away and come back. Once you start it, the clock starts and that's it. That's your only chance. So again, make sure you study. Make sure you're in a secure place. Like don't start the test when you're supposed to be making dinner, right? Don't start the test if you're in a crowded ass place where you can't get something done. Yeah, the time limit is probably about 50 minutes. Rule of thumb is I usually give about 2 minutes per question, which seems like a lot, but it's only a lot. It's only a lot of time if you've studied. If you're trying to look up answers for every question, that 50 minutes goes fast. But if you already know the answer to a lot of the questions because you've studied, that time goes. That time is more than enough. Okay. Any other questions about the exam? If you do, email me, hit me up, no problem. The other thing, start looking at the media law paper, right? Start looking at that on Friday. That's what we're gonna start class by talking about that paper, so I can make sure you guys are kind of prepared for that, know what's coming. The first thing you have to do for that paper is claim a case, right? So at the very least, look in that forum on Moodle of what are the cases that are available, and call dibs on one that strikes your fancy. But on Friday, we're going to start class by talking about what that paper is, how to approach it, what it is I'm looking for, kind of how to get it done. So, okay.